Hey everybody, RPG here. Today I'm going to show you guys how to get the AE LightGun set up on Batocera. So let's get started. Alright, so the first thing that we need to do is we need to take our sensors. We get two sensors with each AE LightGun, and we need to connect these via the USB cable to our PC. So you can see we have a connection right here. I'll disconnect this so you can see how they actually connect together here. You have to be super careful with these because there's a lot of things that can easily be broken on here if we're not careful. So the cable that comes with it just connects just like this. And then the other end of this is USB, which I'll show you right here. This goes right into our PC. So I'm gonna just plug that into the PC real quick. And then this end, we have to mount to our TV. So it has to mount so that these are exposed facing towards you. So you don't want to put them underneath your TV or anything like that. You want to make sure that they're mounted just like this. So you have to get a little creative because they don't come with a mounting bracket. They don't come with any double-sided tape. So you can see that I actually have some double-sided tape on here. I won't say that it works super well because you can see right over here, this one was up just a few minutes ago. It's already starting to fall down. I even put some packing tape under here to kind of reinforce it because unfortunately, while the actual sensor boards don't weigh much, the cable actually weighs quite a bit. And being that it connects on the end, it does weigh these down. So I guarantee you every time that these fall, they're gonna fall just like that because the cable is going to weigh it down. I have plenty of slack on the cable, but even the cables, right here is even heavy there. So it is going to weigh these down. It's not the greatest design. You'll hear a lot about that in my review video of the AE LightGun, but it is what it is. We're going to make do with what we are given. Now, it doesn't matter how you mount these. It doesn't matter which one's on the left or right. When you calibrate this, it's going to pick up where the sensors are and calibrate the gun accordingly. So next thing we need to do is we need to take our actual light gun here, which obviously has the USB cable, which you can see right here. This is going to connect into your PC as well. So I'm going to go ahead, just plug that into my PC. As soon as it's plugged in, you're going to notice that it does light up here. We have the AE logo on the LED display. So that's all we need to do right now in terms of how we connect these. All right, so now that we've got our sensors and our light gun plugged into our PC, now it's time to jump into a light gun game. And we're gonna walk through the calibration and setup process within a game. All right, so I'm gonna show you guys how to set up two different types of light gun games. So we have our old school arcade light gun games, which would be typically found in our MAME collection. And then we also have our home console light gun games, which can be found in a bunch of different collections, anything from Sega Saturn to PlayStation 1, 2, what else? There's probably Dreamcast has a couple as well, Naomi. Bunch of different collections have light gun games. They all pretty much set up the same way, but they may look a little bit different depending, of course, on which collection you jump into. So we're going to jump into Sega Saturn today, and specifically Virtua Cop 2. All right, so once we get into our initial loading screen, anything beyond the Sega Saturn logo, or if you're into PlayStation, it'd be PlayStation, and so on, depending on which collection you're in. You're going to hit your hotkey and typically your X button. That's going to open up RetroArch. So you can see it brings us right to the quick menu here. Once we're in the quick menu, what we're going to do is we're going to hit our back button. That's going to bring us out of the quick menu and we're going to jump into our settings here. Once we're in settings, we're going to jump over, drop down to input. And once we're in input, we're going to drop all the way down here to where it says port 1 controls. We'll select that option. And right at the top, you're going to see it says device type. So by default, it's usually going to be set to control pad, but that's not what we're using for this game. If we were using a gamepad controller like this, then we'd leave it on control pad, but we're using a light gun. So there's actually, for this particular collection, there's two different ways to do this. So if we just scroll over, and I'm using my regular gamepad controller just to navigate through this right now. If we scroll over by just hitting our D-pad right, for example, you can go left too, but I'm going to hit D-pad right. You can see we have 3D control pad, we have arcade racer, mission stick, mouse, stunner, twin stick, and Virtua gun. So for this particular collection, we have two options. We can go with either the Virtua gun, which is what you would have used on the old school Sega Saturn as your light gun, or we can go to mouse. Either is going to work here with the AE LightGun, but what I recommend doing is actually going with whatever was going to be your choice if you were using that original console. So in this case, it would have been the Virtua gun. That's what we're going to go with here. There's pros and cons with this particular collection as to which one you go with, but Virtua Gun works the best. The only downside is with this particular collection is the crosshairs actually have a grayish tone to them, and oddly enough, the background in most of the scenes in this actual game is gray too, so it can be a little bit hard to actually track the crosshairs in this version, but I do find that it works better with the Virtua Gun option. So we're going to leave the device type set to Virtua Gun. We're going to just scroll down now again with our regular gamepad controller, and we're going to go all the way down to where we see our light gun controller options. So you can see right here, we have the little light gun controller icon all the way on the left of this, and we're going to select the first option. Now they're all listed as NA, but if I open this up and I select it, you're going to notice that it says gun trigger. So I have 3 seconds to pull the trigger on my AE LightGun. So I ran out of time there, but I'm going to select it once again. Pull the trigger. You're going to see now that it says mouse 1 up there. So now if we went down to the next option, I'll select that one. We're actually going to leave this one blank. This one's the reload option. So if you're jumping into a game where you have a button reload or you want a button reload versus shooting off the screen, then you would program one of your buttons to your reload button. So there's a bunch of buttons on the AE LightGun. You could program it to literally any button that you want on here. So instead then of shooting off the screen, which I kind of like about light guns, I think that's part of the light gun experience is shooting off the screen. But if you want to just map a reload button, you can hit any button on here that you want. There's a bunch right along where your thumb kind of lines up on here, or of course, any of the other ones either on the back or, right up here next to the trigger. If you're holding with 2 hands like this, it is easy to hit any of those. So I'm going to leave it blank because I do like shooting off screen. So there's a couple additional options here. I'll hit the next one here, which is one we're not going to actually use. But you can see here it says gun AUX A. So this one we're going to leave blank because it doesn't pertain to this particular game, but some of them you're going to want to utilize. So we're going to jump down here. Let me count how many options down it is. Let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So the 6th option down, if you follow those light gun icons, the 6th one down, if we select it, that's going to be our start button. Now I'm going to assign this button right here. I'm going to zoom in that button right there as my start button. Again, I ran out of time here. So I'm going to open it up again and I'm just going to tap that for my start button. So that populates in right here. And you can see on the screen that it says key number 1. So I'm going to go down to the next option down from there. I'm going to select that. That's going to be my select. I'm going to do the next button in here, hit that, and now you can see that that has populated as key number 2. So that's all we need to do for this particular title. Now there are some games out there where you have additional options. But this one is pretty streamlined. There's really not a whole lot other than shoot, reload, and then start and select. So if you have a game, for example, that has maybe 2 trigger options, you have your regular shooting trigger, and then you have a button for like a grenade launcher, Terminator 2, which we're actually going to jump into in the next one here for arcade. That's a game where you have 2 functions. So if you have a game like that for the home console where you have another function, it's usually going to be that second option down, which is AUX A. You can again program that to any button on your AE LightGun controller. So that's all we need to do here. So we're just going to hit the back button on our regular gamepad controller. That's going to bring us back out to input. From here, we can just hit that hotkey along with X. That's going to bring us right back into the actual game. So once we're back into the actual game here, just moving my light gun side to side, you're going to notice I have absolutely no movement tracking on the screen. So there's one more step we need to do here. We need to calibrate this. So we're going to go back into RetroArch. And in order to do that, again, X and your hotkey button brings you right in here. We're going to actually back out. If it takes you into your input, you want to back out and you want to navigate yourself into actually enter any screen that doesn't actually have settings that you can alter. So what we're going to do now is we're going to hit this button right here, located right in front of the trigger, and we're going to pull the trigger right after we hit it. So we're going to hit that button and pull the trigger. You notice that I have the cursor up there. I'm going to pull the trigger while I line up with that cursor. Now it goes down to the bottom right corner. Same thing. And you're going to check your movement. So you can see here I'm moving side to side, but my cursor is actually staying up there. It's not really tracking at all. So we're going to do this process again. We're going to hit this button. We're going to get a cursor on our screen in the top left corner. We're going to aim our gun at it and pull the trigger. And it's going to switch now down to the bottom right corner. Cursor down there, aim at it, pull the trigger. And you want to kind of track as you go from diagonal to diagonal, just go like this. You want to shoot and then slide it down, shoot the next one. So ready? We're gonna do this. You kind of have to be quick with it. And to be perfectly honest, the first time that I did this, it took me about 25 times, no joke. So I'm a little bit better at it now, but you have to find a good distance from your screen where your sensors are located to where you are. It does take a little while to actually get it, but when you get it, you're gonna notice that your cursor on the screen actually moves around perfectly with your movement on the actual light gun. So let's do this again. And now you can see, look at that movement. I'm really smooth there. That only took 2 tries, but I'm moving in circles, and you can see that the cursor there is tracking perfectly. So I'm good to go there. I can take my regular gamepad controller now, and I can hit my hotkey and my X button to bring me back into the game. That's all we need to do right now. Everything's calibrated and ready to go. Once this game loads up to a screen where we can advance back into the actual game, you're gonna notice that we have full range of motion here. So look at the screen. Again, I told you before, the crosshairs in this particular game blend in quite well with the background, but you can see here that the gun is tracking on screen and the cursors are moving really nicely. So let's jump into the game. Remember, we programmed our start and select buttons to the side here. So if I hit the start button, it brings me right into the startup screen here. So I'm gonna actually pull the trigger. I'm highlighting the arcade there, and then I'm gonna hit my start button again. That should bring me into the options to start the game. So let's jump into beginner. Again, you can see the crosshairs are tracking perfectly on the screen here. So just moving around this little file 1 screen. But let's jump into it and I'll show you how well this works. And since I left reload as shooting off screen, you can see that that is tracking quite well. I missed that guy, but that's because my eyesight's pretty poor here with seeing the difference between my crosshairs and the background. That's the only downside to this particular game. And that's not the light guns issue. That's just poor choice on the colors. They should have done like a bright green or blue or red, something that stands out from the background in most of these scenes. So this is working beautifully right now. Again, I gotta struggle to see where my crosshairs are. But again, working really nicely here. So we're actually going to jump out of this game and let's jump into Terminator 2 Judgment Day for the arcade. The arcade is the other typical collection that you'd be doing most of your light guns within. So let's jump out of this one and jump into that one. All right, so here we are in Terminator 2 Judgment Day. This came out in 1991 for the arcade. I actually think this was released on some home consoles, but the particular version we're jumping into would be found in your MAME collection if you're running Batocera. So we're going to be using a combination of obviously the light gun, but also the regular gamepad controller of your choosing. Makes no difference which gamepad controller you're using as long as it works with Batocera. So what we're going to do to get started here is similar to what we did in the previous steps for the home console version. We're going to jump into our RetroArch menu by hitting X and our hotkey enable function button. So that's going to bring us again into the quick menu, very similar to what we did previously. So we're going to go and hit the back button. We're going to jump into our settings, and then we're going to jump into input. We're going to do exactly what we did before, but for this game we actually have some additional buttons to actually configure here. So we're going to go into port 1 controls. We are going to leave the device type alone. We're not going to touch that. We're going to leave it as classic gamepad here because this particular game was only intended for one type of controller on the arcade, and that was a light gun. So we don't have to worry about switching between different devices. So we're going to drop down to same spot that we went to before, except luckily here they're actually labeled. So you'll see here this first option is labeled gun trigger. So you guessed it, we're going to select it with our gamepad controller, pull the trigger. That's going to map it. For reload, we can leave that blank. Actually, we don't even reload in this game. This is one of those point and drag sort of games where you don't have to reload at all. If you wanted to add a button function to your reload rather than shooting off screen. For the games that you do have to reload by shooting off screen, you can certainly do that. It's going to be very similar to what we just did in the previous steps for the home console version. So from here now, we have some additional options, but that's the only one we're going to do right now, and I'm going to show you why in a second. So what we'll do from here is we're going to back out. So all we've done so far is change the gun trigger. We're going to back out by hitting our back button, and we're going to back out once again, and we're going to go into main menu, quick menu. We'll select quick menu, and we're going to drop down to options, and then we're going to go to where it says here display main menu, and you'll see that this is toggled to off. We're just going to hit our D-pad right or left, and we're going to change it to on. Once it's changed to on, just go up one option or down one option so you're no longer highlighting that option. And we're going to hit our X and our hotkey to jump out of RetroArch now. So now you're going to get this little display here. This is going to be your options for changing your settings for this particular game. They're hidden by default on Batocera, so we do have to go in there and enable their view here. So once we get to this part, what we're going to do is we're going to go down to input this game, and we're going to select that. Now this selection may be a different button than what you've used to select previously with your gamepad controller. So usually I would be going with the bottom button here, which is B in this case for this particular controller. On here now, it switches to A. So it's just one of those funky things. So don't be worried if now you're hitting your select button and nothing's happening on screen. You just have to switch your button. It's one of those weird quirky things with emulation. So here you're going to notice we have a bunch of different options here. And these are going to be your different functions for this game. So player 1 button 1 is always going to be your trigger. So what we're going to do here, it actually has populated in, that's what those ... is up there at the top. It's populated in from the previous mapping, but just to confirm this, we're going to select it with our A button, and we're going to pull that trigger. So it's going to take a couple seconds, and you'll notice now we have those ... back. That just confirms again that everything has set up properly. So we're going to go down to player 1 button 2. So this is one of those games I mentioned in the previous steps that has additional functions to it. In this case, you have a rocket launcher or a grenade launcher in the game. It's an additional button function. So this button right here makes for a great selection for this function. So that's what I'm going to program this to. I'm going to select that option, and I'm going to hit that button right there. You'll notice again, a couple seconds, boom, we got those 3 dots at the top. We had those before. I have set this game up previously, so that's probably why they're still there. So now that we've programmed that second function there, the grenade launcher in this case, to that side button here, we're all set. So what we need to do now is with our gamepad controller, just scroll all the way down to the bottom where you see return to main menu. We're going to select that. And now we're back to this menu here with the game in the background. So we're going to go back into RetroArch now, again, X and your hotkey enable button. And that's going to bring you back to the options screen here. We're going to go back to display main menu. We're going to select that to off now. So once you've switched that to off, you're going to just highlight a different option here, either up or down, makes no difference. And now you're going to hit your hotkey enable and X once again to exit RetroArch and go back to your game. All right, so now that we're back into our game, we're going to use our regular gamepad controller to insert coins and to start our game, and then we're going to use the light gun to play our game because all of our gun functions are going to be programmed to this. So I'm going to hit my select button on my gamepad controller to add coins.
Excellent.
So you can see I have 7 credits right now. I'm going to hit the start button on my gamepad controller, and that's going to bring us into the game. So now you should have movement on your light gun within the game from the previous setup that we did, just because usually those carry over. If not, then you're going to have to repeat that process for calibration. So let's test it out here. It does seem to be tracking perfectly. You can see aim and everything perfect on here. Really happy with that. Perfect in every way right now. So let's test out our grenade function that we programmed. So let me wait till we get some guys. There's some guys. I'm going to just hit this button that we programmed it to. Boom, there it is. Missed them, of course. Hit my own guy, but hey, the button works, right? So we are good to go here. Everything is working beautifully. That's really going to do it for this process. It's not the easiest process in the world, in all honesty, but it does work out in the end. It may take you a few times to calibrate it. In this case, it only took me those 2 tries. Didn't get it on the first try, partly because I'm explaining and babbling here, but second try, it did work quite well. So if you have any questions, feel free to hit me up in the comment sections below or reach out to me directly. Always happy to help out any way I can, but that's going to do it for this video today. If you enjoyed this video and you found it helpful for setting up the AE LightGun on Batocera, then smash the like button for me. Be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel because we do a ton of different videos based around retro gaming here on the RetroPie Guy YouTube channel. We do tutorials like this one, gameplay demos, product reviews, and then we've got the Forgotten Favorites YouTube series every Monday and Thursday night. So lots of great content here. Best way to stay in the loop is to hit that subscribe button. But again, that's going to do it for today. Thanks for watching.